Welcome to the Birth Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Hoff, BSN RN. I am a wife, a mother of two, and a nurse specializing in the care of women and newborns. In this podcast, we will share powerful journeys of birth givers with the goals of lifting the veil on the birth experience, healing through sharing, and beginning an open conversation to strengthen trust and promote transparency between birthing people and healthcare providers. Hello. Today, I am honored to welcome back Bianca Sprague, the founder of BeboMia, a globally recognized doula training organization dedicated to making birth work accessible to all. This episode is a part of Podcasthon, a powerful global initiative where podcasters unite to amplify charities making a difference. For my Podcasthon episode, I'm shining a spotlight on a cause that's close to my heart, the BeboMia Doula Scholarship Program. This program is breaking down barriers by providing education, mentorship, and support to aspiring doulas, especially those from marginalized communities who may not otherwise have access to this vital training. Bianca's journey into birth work was inspired by her own personal experiences, navigating new motherhood without the support she needed. Now she has made it her mission to ensure others don't have to walk this path alone. Today, we're diving into the power of doula care and how it transforms family experiences, the rising need for doulas, and why access to birth support is more important than ever, and how the BeboMia Doula Scholarship Program is equipping individuals with the tools to support birthing families and create sustainable careers in birth work. This conversation is more than just a discussion. It's a call to action to ensure that everyone, regardless of financial and social barriers, has access to the support they deserve. Bianca, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me back. And that was so lovely. I can't get enough of when people read or talk about me. I used to get so shy about it and and as I've done my own healing work, it makes my heart feel so full. I just let it wash over me. So Thank you for those kind words.
Oh, I love it. I love what you're doing. I love how you train your doulas. I love that it's a year-long program. It still is, right?
Yeah, okay. Folks have 2 years. I mean, they never leave the community, and we could do continuing education forever.
Yeah.
So it's very comprehensive. As it
the
should
other
be.
thing,
It's a
yes,
care
as
field.
Yes. The thing that I love as a nurse too is that you focus on making sure that the doulas understand the hospital process, that they have some working knowledge of how that works in the hospital and how to help advocate for what the patient or your client wants, and not necessarily in a combative us versus them way, which
the patient and is stuck in the middle, and it's really important. It's not only fighting the medical system, of which is deeply flawed.
Right.
We teach how to change the system, which is not while somebody's giving birth.
Right.
There's lots of ways around that to change the system. But there's also, that runs alongside of that, it's really important that we teach our doulas to not be attached to outcomes, because people can be fighting their system as well as being like, I will get you that home birth. I will get you that unmedicated birth. I will avoid an operative birth if somebody actually might prefer an operative birth.
Right.
And so there's many ways that a not great trained birth worker can actually do harm. And one of the big ones is chaos in the birthing space when you're, using that to go to war rather than you have to prepare your clients. And then there's lots of other ways that we challenge the systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that, because that's helping us provide patient-centered care. If you're actually teaching us what, as a nurse, even though I help my clients do the same thing just before.
Yes.
But it's part of it. It's part of teaching how to provide patient-centered care, because hospitals aren't set up for that. They're a business. And having a doula in there to support not just the birth giver, but the hospital staff, because the way things are set up, we all know that if you are a nurse or a doctor, you are not just with one patient. And so it makes it a challenge to give the support that a mom may need or want in the birth space. Essentially, we just check the boxes as nurses. And when we have time, after we're done keeping everybody safe, we can go in and try to do other things. But it can be pretty disjointed. And to have that one person that knows how to function in the hospital setting, in the birth environment that is professional and trained, that is such a game changer.
Yeah, we know the limitations of time that nurses have. There's so much charting, and we know that the workload is just, it's unreasonable, the workload that's put on a nurse. And I know that there's lots of nurses that would really love to be doing the different type of patient care, because that's usually why you went into a helping and healing field, is because you wanted to do that. But unfortunately, due to bureaucracy and the business of medicine, you're standing in front of a computer, checking, clicking. You don't get to really develop that relationship with your patients, which I know it can be really sad for nurses and midwives too. Once it regulated, midwives are in that same boat now too. And I know that there's probably a really big loss feeling, and it can be a challenge for a nurse to have what they wish it was and what the reality is. Because I know lots of nurses are like, no, we do lots of fill in the blank. And I was like, no, you want to be doing lots of that.
Right.
But you're actually not. Like, if I had a timer and was like, go, how much hands-on time did you have touching my client? It's very low. And I do not hold that against nurses. They're also down getting the shortest end of the stick as far as if we go to the top of government and policymakers, and then the president of the hospital system, the board, and it works its way down. And nurses, you're just right down there with doulas and the patients.
Catching all of the crap.
It's raining down on you. So we keep that in mind, because that is also what's happening for nurses, like getting kicked all day long. And I love nurses, and you guys are between a rock and a hard place. And it does mean that nurses do shitty things, but it's explainable because fatigue and not enough time. And you're also being guided by the doctors, right? Guiding in the wrong direction. If a nurse has heard a doctor say everybody gets PIT, then you start parroting, everybody gets PIT. And so the first time somebody's, I don't think I want it, they're like, everybody gets it. So put your arm out because I have stuff to do. And like, that's not the nurse's fault. That's the culture that you're working with.
It takes a long time to like unlearn that stuff that you learned. Like, you go in knowing the right way. You get taught how to do things. You get, I don't want to say bullied, but
bullied.
I mean, essentially you have to do it the way that they want you to do it in order to learn how they want you to do it. And they want you to fall in line with the team so that you're an active member of the team, right? And then at some point, once you feel comfortable with all the stuff, then you can go back and you can unlearn some of it and decide how you personally want to practice, and then help others practice that way. And so that's kind of where I'm at, but there's still moments where I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And honestly, the moments that I'm with the patient, even though my mode of operation is to try to keep the space quiet and sacred and not go in as much, like I'll go in and I'll be like, what are we doing? And how are we doing? And how can I support you? And I do the things. And then I give them the space, because I sometimes feel like I'm interrupting. It's important to just learn how to do all those creative things inside of the structure that the hospital gives you, which is where doulas come in. And that's why I think you guys are so important. Because when I have a good doula at the bedside and I can work together, and that person that they hired, they got to know that they invited into their space versus the person that was just appeared there when they got there.
They may not on them.
You may not like me for whatever reason. So I'm not the one that you asked to be in the space. I'm here for 12 hours. And so maybe we're going to have a great relationship, or maybe you're just going to wish that I would come in and like adjust your monitor and get out. However that looks, I'm going to try to work with the vibe that's going on in the room. And if there's a doula in there that knows that patient, that's so much better, because then we can work together towards their goals.
Yeah. And as a doula, we really want to be bridging their core team that birthing person is brought in. So that might be their partner if they have one, their sister, their mom, whoever they've said, these people are safe and intimate to me. I get the pleasure of supporting nurses in like, how do we do our jobs and allow them to stay in the bubble that they want to be in. And truly, when I think of my role, or any doulas, we're like taking care of lots of different facets simultaneously. And a lot of times people think we're just there for the person giving birth, and it's not. And then it's so much better that way, because the person giving birth might not want you to touch them and might want you to be like nowhere near them. And so sometimes you're like, what happens if somebody doesn't want to be massaged?
Right.
You're like lots still happen. And this is helpful too if anybody has a partner who's pregnant and listening to this. your partner might be like, oh, I don't want to be replaced, or I don't know why they'd be there. Partners need so much care.
Right.
They don't know what's happening. And even if they have a medical background and they know all about this, their job is to be present to their loved one, as well as to have time to sleep and eat and update people if that's part of their plan. Because after the baby's born, the partners and support people are up so that birthing person can, once the adrenaline down a little bit, can crash, and that they have a rested, watered, fed care team ready to take over. And the role of a doula is just, it's such a robust and amazing one to be in that space.
I feel like the role of the doula is to help usher people into parenthood and help them truly with that part, because while the nurse and the doctors are there to ensure safety, whatever that looks like.
A heartbeat, that there's heartbeats.
That. Ensure that there are heartbeats and that there is blood to circulate the heartbeat, right? That's
blood.
Yes, mostly oxygenated blood, and that there's enough of it. That's essentially our role. And we can also teach people basic needs like changing the diaper, feeding the baby, that kind of stuff. But that's our main focus, is very, very essential life functions. We make sure that they stay intact. And if it ever looks like they're at risk, then we jump into action. But the rest of it that's helping you become a parent, that's helping you transition and doing all those things, that's the support you need, because the hospital staff's not going home with you.
Yeah.
You're just going to be there for a couple of days.
And we now know this. We know so much more, that the adage used to be like healthy mom, healthy baby all over hospital walls. And how we define that is just what you're saying, is alive. And mostly alive. Like the bar of alive is not even
half your blood is still there. Be happy.
Like, it's rough. And we now know how somebody feels about their birth is actually the most important thing, outside of obviously keeping their heart beating. But like the sending people home with birth trauma, feeling disempowered, feeling like they just lost their voice, and expecting them to step into parenthood. And when I say step into parenthood, I don't just mean changing the diapers and doing the work of it, but like stepping in, feeling like they have the skills and tools and ability to protect and advocate for their child for the rest of their life. And when they have just lost their voice, or been even the language used, you failed to progress, like any of these kinds of words, we had to break your water for you. You're not doing it on your own, so we need to help you. That stuff, more than we can ever, even people here who are like, no, I'm not that woo. I wouldn't be impacted by that. I promise you.
Wait till those hormones are flooding your body and see.
It just, these messages go in and already we feel like we're not enough. Not to mention we're going home with unnecessary interventions that have side effects that are terrible, that our pelvic floors have been obliterated unnecessarily, stitches unnecessarily, incorrect lactation support, if any at all, these things. So now we're like, okay, here you go. And so we've got this depletion physically and emotionally, it's rock bottom. And then we don't know how to actually support new parents out in the world. People show up with stuffed toys for the first couple of days, and then that's the end of that.
So like, so useless.
It's so useless. And then you feel like you have to entertain. So you like have to put pants on because everybody's coming over and your friends from high school are on your sofa and you feel like you need to be chatting. Like all of these things, like that's just the reality. And we think that's normal. That's been normalized. And it would be fine, everybody. Like if you're like, why are we picking at this? It's working. It's like clearly not, because postpartum mood disorders have never been higher. Death by suicide is one of the leading causes of new moms in the first 12 months. So it is not working for us. No. We just think it's normal to be like depleted and sad and hate your partner. We're like,
welcome to motherhood. That's beautiful.
But it's beautiful. And then we feel like we're like, oh, we hate this, but we can't say we hate this because people think we're saying we hate being a mom, i.e. our children. And so I'm so passionate about this, clearly, but
I know.
Doulas, by protecting our client's voice, whatever it looks like. And this is a home birth. This is an induction birth. This is your plan is to have an epidural the minute you walk through that door birth. This is an elected C-section. This is an emergency C-section. It does not matter where and how you're giving birth. Your voice has to be protected. Your body has to be protected. Kelly, you're talking about nurses, and one of the elements that's missing in all of this is the fact nurses are human, And you right away are running up against a bias as soon as you meet a nurse. And we can't help it because it's all people. But unfortunately, we're so susceptible to language and how we feel in birth because it's so vulnerable and our frontal lobe is flicking in and out, hopefully just staying out. But unfortunately, our birth environment doesn't allow it just to like shut off.
Yeah.
But it's like flicking in and out. So you're like kind of in your body thinking rationally and you're kind of in this other place that you've never experienced. And so now we're like potentially have a healthcare provider that has a judgment about your fat body or thinks you're too young to have a baby or you've had too many babies or you don't speak English well enough or that you're a part of a poly family or they don't like your pronouns, whatever these things are, again, because nurses are human. And so we've got this whole element that's happening that will happen 100% of the time because all people have a judgment of other people. But how it is expressed is kind of up in the air. And so the role of a doula is to actually mitigate the risks for all of those things. And you don't know what those things are for you because you don't know the nurse you're going to have. So the nurse might also be a racialized person, in which case you might not experience racism, or they might be queer, so they might be open to that, but they still might be fat phobic, or they still might have ageism, or they don't like the choices that you're making. And if they were doing it, they would think, you're careless, or they suspect that you probably look like you've done drugs, but it might just be because you have green hair and not great dental care. There's lots of things that are happening simultaneously. And a doula with a good training, a goodly trained doula, a goodly trained doula, a well-trained doula, also learns how to buffer for those things. So our clients might not even know that this stuff's happening because the doula has literally put themselves between these potential isms or biases or judgments. Or I know that there's nurses who I loved working with, and then I've had clients come in that something about them rubbed them the wrong way. They were like, I have a judgment here. And then they've been really rough with my client. And so I've been able to be like, hey, do you want me to do that? Or make eye contact because I have built a rapport with the staff to be like, you're not treating my client the same way that you would. You've treated all my this aged married clients this way. And you're now treating my 15-year-old client very differentry. So I get to do that before my 15-year-old client might know that they're getting punishment treatment, which nurses of teens do. They're like, we're going to make this as uncomfortable as possible so that you've made a grave mistake here in having a baby as a child. And so I get to protect that space. And hopefully my clients have missed it, or like guiding the nurse out to be like, hey, listen, I feel like you might be a bit off today because I've had just such wonderful experiences with you. And I'm just like, I really need their birth to be as wonderful as it is. So if you're not really feeling up to it, do you think we could swap nurses, or do you need to go eat something? And that's how I can have that. And my clients don't know that's even happened. I come in and I'm like, great, your IV's going. Are you happy in this position? Do you want some ice chips? What do we want to do next? And they're just like, this is great. I'm continuing on and I'm going to have my baby. And so those are things that most partners or friends or sisters wouldn't know how to do it. They'd just be like, oh my God, that nurse is such a bitch. Or like, and then we kind of circle in and A, the behavior doesn't stop, and B, now
there's tension. And then the nurse doesn't necessarily. Not everybody is recognizing their own bias, by the way.
No, so, it's impossible for most people.
What will happen is there'll be this tension in the room and it will just build and build. And then the nurse is like, what? So, and I've been in situations where I don't know what it was I did. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how to fix this. I feel like you hate me. And I don't know. And usually what I'll do is I'll ask for a new assignment.
Well, because biases do go both ways. I want to hold that the clients might be like, oh, I don't really want a racialized person being my nurse, somebody with an accent, somebody whose perfume smells too bad, whatever the thing is. Biases are going all directions.
Yes. Yeah. And it's possible that, again, you don't know your own bias. So it's possible that they've picked up on something that I didn't even know is happening. But it's really important to be able to have a good relationship and not let the tension build in that space, because that is the space where we need the tension to be non-existent so that mom can be as relaxed as possible.
And I love that I get to really moderate and support in that way, and just have my clients just not know about it. Because I know I've also had lots of nurses roll their eyes because they're doing something, quote, weird. And I'm just like, I just make sure that my clients don't feel a judgment of this thing. Like, there's things that even I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird. But
right.
It's not.
But we're going to go with it. Yeah.
We're going to go with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels weird to even hold that space. And sometimes I'm like, get thrown into whatever the song or the symbol, or I don't know. I'm thinking of some husbands that were a bit cringy in my mind. But I'm like, they're in their zone and it's beautiful and magical to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't do this at my birth, but it's not my birth. My job is to just support their birth.
So what I love about this program is that it's allowing more people access to becoming a doula, which now there are programs out there that's like a weekend doula class. It's not this.
Your tone. I have to work on how I say it, being like, there's weekend trainings available. And you did the weekend, which is what I think in my head to say it. I have to say it.
Weekend doula? I don't know. I feel like doulas do a lot, and I would really want them to have a lot of education. I feel like this is so great because it gives people that want to become birth workers access to a very comprehensive doula training program that sets them up for being able to feel comfortable and competent in a hospital setting. And this program gives access to people that wouldn't have it otherwise. Could you describe a little bit about what somebody will be getting? Somebody that applies for this scholarship, they get the scholarship. What do they have access to once they've started this program? Have you ever felt like your hormones are running the show? If you're dealing with sudden weight gain, sleepless nights, or a missing spark in your sex drive, it's time to flip the script with the Book of Hormones, the ultimate playbook for women's health and hormonal balance through every stage of life, by Dr. Shweta Patel. Dr. Patel, a highly regarded OBGYN, breaks down the mystery of hormones in a way that's easy to understand. No medical jargon, just real-life solutions. With a writing style that's Mindy Project meets Sex and the City, she'll have you laughing, nodding, and finally understanding your body. From managing postpartum and PCOS to tackling hormonal imbalances head-on, this book is packed with actionable steps to help you take control of your health. It's like having your gyno BFF hand you the ultimate playbook to thrive. Want to feel amazing again? Download it free on Kindle Unlimited or buy it now on Amazon. Find the link in the show notes.
Yeah, so our scholarship, oh man, I'm so proud of this program. It kind of got away from me. It started just with like one student, I don't know, in 2014, maybe 2012, somewhere around there, that we offered our first scholarship. And now it's bonkers. We've given over $350,000 in tuition away to predominantly equity-seeking groups, but students in over 50 countries. And so when they come in, our scholarship committee reviews all the applications, and the committee is made up of also recipients as well as healthcare professionals around the world. And once they're in, we actually have our scholarship students go through just like a standard. They're not separated in any way, and they get the full program. So with that, they get their live lectures, which everybody does. They get their access to office hours, their practicum sessions, breakout sessions, free therapy, because we believe that when we're doing this kind of care work, we see things that have big T and little t traumas, and we want to have healed helpers and healers out there. They get the entire program, as well as lifelong continuing education. And with that, we also have what we call the Scholarship Light Up series. And these also go on forever, that all of the scholarship recipients throughout time, we go once a month, and we have this, I don't know why I've never been to church, but I like picture it like this gospel session. Like they're just these really good, feel good, reach out to community, keep our hands on the pulse. We really want to see scholarship recipients finish. And we know that some of the precarity that comes with folks who have no and low income, there's a lot of additional stresses that need to be acknowledged and need to be held and need to be like, not to say that if somebody can come up with the tuition, you don't also have these stresses, but we really nurture our scholarship community so that it's not just like, here's your entrance and then Godspeed and let's see how you go with everybody in the standard stream. So we do those light up sessions, as I say, monthly. And in that we do community support. And then we always have, I'm now using sermon. I don't know why I've fallen into church language.
Okay.
But there's an
a
element.
Keynote?
Yeah, like it feels too flat because they're really touching. And
a testimony.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Trying to de-church it for you.
I don't know what's happening to me. But I do, something about the light up feels different than anything else we do. But yeah, then we have a thing after. And like the last one we did was about asking for help. What are the barriers to asking for help? And part of it is I actually do that one probably every 6 months or so, like a touch base on asking for help, because it's really brave to ask for help. And we hold every person that's reached out and said, you know what, I really want to do this. This is a difference I want to make in my community. And I want you guys to get me there. And that's so brave. And so sometimes people are like, they've done it and then they've retreated back again. And I want people to keep asking for help. All should be asking for help all the time, regardless of income. This is something that we struggle with. It's part of this neoliberal nonsense of go into your house, you live alone, you figure it out on your own. You just live with your baby alone. And if you're a good parent, you'll do it all. This kind of, I feel like this scholarship committee has already done such a massive vulnerable thing that it's like a really fun conversation to keep that going, because I already think they're ahead of the group on that skill set. One of the things we also are really proud of is maybe 3 years ago, we pivoted to offer partial scholarships as well, because we did have folks write to us saying, I'm not no income, I'm low income, but I have saved half my tuition. And I keep trying. And for 2 years, I've been trying to do the program because it just happens. And then I don't get that last little bit. So people can ask for a 30% scholarship, a 50% scholarship, or 70% scholarship. And with that, we've been able to have maybe 50 additional students a year go through.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know why it took us so long to think of that. I was like, because
it's hard.
I was like, people can just ask for a little bit of help, because it was so hard because everybody would just be sent in the full tuition. And so then we'd be like, we have 15 scholarships. But there was people that are like, I don't actually need $2,000. I need $500. I have the rest ready. And so that was really exciting. And we've made even a bigger impact. And with our application process, we've been tweaking the application every semester since we started the program, because it's kind of like an ever-changing, we never want it to feel like poverty porn, and we never want people to have to prove that they're in need. To us, we're like, use your integrity. And if you're coming in low integrity, which we have people, after that, we've seen they've opened their Facebook up or they've shared things. And I was like, oh, that sucks that you've gone on 3 vacations, because there's people that, your integrity's out, and we just let them exist with that they've done a low integrity thing. Yeah. So we've been really intentional with the types of questions we asked and why we're asking it, so that being under-resourced sucks. I was single parented for many years with never enough. It felt so terrible, anything that would like, quote, offer help, that I was like, you need to make me to feel like so shitty to maybe get some crumbs. Yeah. And so we take feedback every semester to be like, how did you feel filling this out? Because we want people to feel empowered and excited from the moment they start filling out that application, and not feel like, we don't want you to dig through and tell us all the terrible things. We want to like
how horrible your life is.
Yeah. Like it's not a race to the bottom.
All the trauma.
Yeah. And some places there's room to share that. But we really want people to see how resilient they are and see the gifts that their life experiences can provide their community, because we know lived experience is way more impactful than traditional education streams. And so somebody's writing saying they've been incarcerated since they were 18 from crimes of poverty. Now they're out and they want to do these things and they want to support the incarcerated community. I'm like, let's fan this. Let's not talk about the fact that you fell into the terrible industrial prison complex. Let's talk about that you have a lived experience and you know what's happening to other pregnant people who find themselves in these situations, which most of the time is the system's failing individuals, and it's not the fault of the individual. Now they're treated completely differently by society and deserve care and support and celebration and love. And we want them to talk about what they can do with this experience and send a ripple of amazing out into the world, rather than having like crumple in that now they're reintegrating into society and not cherished. And it is a work in progress, because much as many of our students or folks that apply are from Canada and the US and Australia and England, we do have people that are applying from many countries where some of the questions are not relevant. They're just like, wait, what are you talking about? For example, equity seeking groups. We have, say, people applying from the MENA region. So it's the Middle East, North Africa. And they're not an equity seeking group in North Africa as a racialized person. They're part of dominant culture. And so we have to navigate through because we're like, okay, they say they're not an equity seeking group, but we can see that they're a Black person. But they're not experiencing racism in their country. And so it's so nuanced and complicated, which is why we have representation from different countries who are reviewing these applications. And there's other things that, I don't know, it's not necessarily culturally relevant, some of the questions. So we do have to find like really creative ways to draw out that information, knowing our program is global. And folks get to answer, we've gone on a whole journey here.
No, I love it. This is amazing.
They get so much support because one of the things we're really proud of is the no hidden fees part of our certification. Like you come in, you're certified, and it's up to us to do your continuing education. It's up to us to recertify you. It's up to us to keep you relevant and current with your skills. And so our scholarship recipients have the full program that every person does. There's nothing different about what happens as they come through. And with that, because it's great that we teach people how to be doulas, but we need to teach people how to connect with clients or be picked up by a hospital system or an insurance company, however you want to get paid. Throughout the whole program, their business training that runs alongside it, it's all included as well. And they go through their business cohort with their peers. They're going through and getting that training, and it's really fun. I get to teach all the business stuff, and it's my favorite because we talk about all the things you can do with this training, which is not just hands-on care. You're an expert now in reproductive health and justice, from fertility all the way to that postpartum period. And so we spend a couple hours literally talking about all the businesses you could start with this information, because I know lots of people are really drawn to it, but they're like, oh, I have 3 kids under 6. And so we're like, you will soon be able to be on call because your kids are going to be in school in a couple of years. And in the interim, here's all these really amazing in-person products and digital businesses that you can start so that you are setting that groundwork with your business and your brand. And so that when you are ready, if you are, maybe your digital business is great and you just continue on that. But if you're like, no, I really want to do hands-on traditional doula care, that we have that priming done so that you're not just like that after your first kid goes to kindergarten that you're like, okay, well, I guess now I'm going to start my doula business. There's lots of stuff that you can be doing. So we teach all of those skills, which allow people to actually make this profitable and lucrative, and to support as many families as possible so they know how to find you.
Hey there, incredible mamas and mamas-to-be. Are you looking for an online community where the magic of motherhood meets the empowerment of self-care? Then I've got just the place for you. Join my Bump and Beyond online community. At Bump and Beyond, we celebrate the journey of every bump rocker and post-birth boss. You, dear mama, deserve nothing but the best, and that's exactly what this community provides. Prepare to be pampered, cherished, and showered with all the love and support you deserve. Our mission is simple yet powerful: to be your one-stop destination for all things self-care, nurturing, and indulgence. Because let's face it, you're not just a mom, you're a fierce, unstoppable family CEO. At Bump and Beyond, I search the nation for mamas who are passionate about helping other mamas like you become the most successful version of yourself during your motherhood journey. Every resource in this community is either a virtual service that you can enjoy in the comfort of your own home, or a product that can be shipped right to your doorstep. And everyone in the community is passionate about helping new mamas thrive. So come on in, explore our virtual aisles, connect with like-minded individuals, and immerse yourself in a community that is always here for you. Whether you're browsing, making new friends, or simply treating yourself, know that this space is yours to return to whenever you need a dose of positivity and empowerment. Welcome to a place where you are celebrated, cherished, and honored every step of the way. Welcome to the Bump and Beyond online community, where every mom shines like the superstar she is. Join us today and let's build our motherhood village together. Go to www.facebook.com/groups/Bump and Beyond.
That's www.facebook.com/groups/BUMP, N as in Nancy, BEYOND. You can also find the link in the show notes. Be sure to say that you heard about us on the Birth Journeys podcast. I can't wait to see you there. I love that. That's so amazing. So how can people donate to the scholarship fund?
Yeah, so we have the Ember Blueprint is what it's called. And so that's on the site as well. We have what are they called? I wanted to say Kickstarter, but it's not. It's like one of those apps that you can continue to donate. And we just keep it open all the time.
Okay.
And so folks can, and all of that goes right into the scholarship fund. The fund at this point is just my donated money because I feel passionate about it. So I cover all of the tuitions for all of our scholarships. But we also have a swag shop, and 100% of the proceeds of our swag shop. So if anybody buys a sweatshirt or water bottle, mug, anything like that, all the profits also go into the scholarship fund.
I love that. Can you send me the links to that so that I can put it in the show notes? Amazing.
Of course.
What have we not talked about?
Oh my God.
I feel like we talked about a lot about this program.
I think one of the things that I think is important, because we've talked so much about how doulas benefit the care team, benefit the families, but I think it's really important for us to talk about briefly how doula work actually is transformative for the doula. I think we introduced group therapy, like free therapy, to the program because we noticed how the information is for people who say learn about informed consent, or learn that they never had to take their pants off in labor, or that they learn that they experienced medical racism because they just always felt like something had happened, but they didn't know. Oh, I didn't know we shouldn't cry it out, and that everybody just told me to, or like I was misinformed, or I was lied to, or whatever those things are. As we go through the program, my goal is to have doulas, the student doulas in training, have this like transformation for themselves. So like my goal is actually to empower women and queer folks, and I chose to do it through the vehicle of doula training. But I want people at the end of the training to have a better understanding socially and politically of the environment that they live within. And so we have people come into the program that are like, haven't heard a lot of the language that we use. They don't really know about inclusive language outside of like the obnoxious performative things that they might hear out in the world, but by the end of it have had some shift to understand their own personal biases, to have an understanding of like a reconnection with humanity, which I know seems like way out there, but we've done it so intentionally that at the end, you're just like, I feel like I have more love for myself and for people out there. And to also have an assessment of the environment that they are existing within, because when a lot of women and queer folks, most women and queer folks have some kind of precarity or lack of safety in their environment. It might be within their family of origin. It might be within their primary relationship or their partnership. It's for sure out in the world. We're not safe, which is why we carry our keys between our knuckles when we get in our cars. We're not safe. And to have a better understanding of safety first for us, and then we're able to provide that really amazing care. And honestly, becoming a doula, it made me a better parent. It made me a better human. I've allowed it to be this vehicle for my own healing. And I'm not alone in this. We have lots of students. I would say the majority of students leave being like, I know I've transformed. And then going out and advocating for other people, it's such powerful care work. So I think that I want people to know you can make it whatever you want out of it, but we teach you that it's a place that can actually fill your cup and empower you to make potentially changes in your own life, whatever that looks like, but be able to help and heal yourself and then go out and do this. There's also, it can be quite profitable. So I want to talk pragmatically, because it's all great that you're like, cool, my heart will be lighter, but it is a business. And so, you know, there's a few ways that you can get paid as a doula, which is an important element of it. I believe birth work should be compensated. I also believe every person deserves a birth worker. There's a gap that I think systems and society needs to fill, because I know that we can get pulled into this. Well, if everybody needs a birth worker, how can you be charging for this? I also deserve to make a living wage. So we talk very candidly about that there is a gap between these two truths. And like, how do we bridge that gap? And so we support in some of that bridging, but the reality is there are folks that will pay you for doula care. So the average doula in the US makes about $50,000. That's for birth doula work, about $50,000. That's what the latest studies say. There's a pretty big variance depending on if you live rurally or in a city. I would say the average doula, a full-time doula in the city, makes six figures, because charging between $2,000 and $4,000 a client is pretty standard in most urban settings. I charged about $4,000 as a client when I lived in Toronto. I just moved rurally, and I had to cut that exactly in half because I live in a tiny town with a tiny rural hospital, and that would be staggering to spend that. And so if you're working part-time, obviously you're going to make less if you're living in a small community. So I actually counter that with digital products, which now puts me on a global platform as my private, like my personal business as a doula. That is one way, is people like writing a check or handing you cash and being like, come provide care. There is also a way that you can be connected with insurance companies. So you can either do contracting or credentialing with an insurance company. And one is the insurance company like pays you through your client's benefits, or they have TRICARE or Medicaid. You can also set up, I always forget which one's which, because obviously as a Canadian, we have a different medical system. Hold on. I have notes that I literally have the tape to my desk because I have to reference it so many times a day. You can also, so that's credentialing is they pay, and then contracting. Sorry if I've mixed this up. It doesn't matter because you can do one or the other. And then contracting is where you are contracted by the insurance provider and they just open the floodgates and send you clients. Now, you don't make as much per client that way. However, your roster is always full. You don't need a website. You don't need business cards. You don't need to come up with a logo. It just goes through your insurance number, your provider number. And so that's a really cool stream that did not exist. And so that's been a lot of progress made for those in the US. There's also hospital programs, there's nonprofits, there's lots of other ways you can get picked up, or through an agency or a collective. So if you're like, oh, I don't think I'm a very good entrepreneur, there's lots of things now that you can do to have this be your full-time career, or as many clients as you can take. But that feels like some kind of exciting progress. I can't speak to the insanity that's happening with your administration currently and how these programs are going to run. So Godspeed.
I was just thinking about that. I was like, I don't know if that's going to stay, but okay. But everyone can agree that babies need to be, well, let me back that up. Everybody is happy when babies are born. Yeah. That's the one thing that everybody can agree on.
That's true. And the bottom line, which I hate that it's an entry point, but we have had change with it. We know doulas save money. Now, unfortunately, the healthcare system is pulled between being in bed with pharmaceuticals and they also want to save money. And that is a conflict, because having a doula is less epidurals, having a doula is less interventions. And so they're like, but it means
when there's an
less
IV fluid shortage.
Yeah, that's true.
We need those doulas, right?
That's true. And the evidence is there that having a well-trained doula in the space decreases epidurals, decreases operative birth, decreases unnecessary interventions, increases
negative outcomes.
Yeah, negative outcomes. Labors are shorter. That means those people are out of those beds and the next person can get in. So if we speak the language of the system, which is bottom line language, we have the evidence. And so they are noticing, which is why we've had this rapid, suddenly nobody knew what a doula was, to now them being like, yeah, the hospital, we'll pay for it. Come on in, doulas. And it is because we make such a big difference to the bottom line. They're grappling with the fact that doctors have a lot of pull and pharmaceuticals have a lot of pull. And for some reason, they're against doulas, even though, come on, get a grip.
I don't know.
Get a grip. Yeah. But we do challenge practice-based care. But practice-based care needs to be challenged. Again, we would not touch it if outcomes were great, but
Right.
we've had the highest rate of mortality and morbidity of birthing people and babies in any period of modern history.
Mhm.
So like too many people are not surviving birth to be like, do you know what? It ain't broke. Don't fix it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And it's hard because practice-based care or hospital standardized care or whatever it is trying to continue to make it like a well-oiled machine and forgetting the fact that people aren't machines. And
No.
that's not, you can't have individualized care or patient-centered care and practice-based care and standardized care all at the same time. You have to be able to have a conversation and know how to switch it up and know how to respond and do things different ways when it's great to have medicine when you need medicine.
When you need medicine. So I serve a lot of nurses and doctors as my clients. And it's my favorite because I like that I have to like kind of tiptoe. Like I have to get creative. It keeps me on my toes. I can't get into my spiels in the same way because I can't be like doctors are going to because they're doctors. And so recently I was talking to one of my clients who is a family doctor with obstetric specialty. And we're talking about what's her birth location. So I was like, what's your birth location? And she's, oh, like, I have a midwife, so I could go have a home birth. And I was like, yep. And she was like, but I know that my community wouldn't understand my choice because we have the messaging that home birth is a dangerous place to give birth. And I just listened. And she's like, even though all the research shows giving birth at home is the safest place physically. Now, not everybody wants to give birth there, but it is physically safest place to give birth. And she's, I have the studies in front of me. And as doctors, we still say, if you prioritize safety for you and your baby, you would not give birth at home because that's semi-careless. You have everything you need here. And so it's a really interesting conversation to have because I was like, so what are we going to do for you so that you can not be a doctor and be spouting things that are incorrect? How are we going to cut through and go to the truth of evidence-based care? Is to give birth is at home. So where do you want to give birth? Let's like leave safety out of it because we know it's at home. What does your heart want, right? But anytime I work with nurses and doctors, I have to do so much of that because I'm like, what do you think of this? And they're like, we should book our induction at 40 plus 3. And I was like, there's no evidence for this. So what do you want to do? And having those kinds of conversations because it's really hard to just go with what's always been done, even though what's always been done violates most of the governing body's recommendations from the World Health Organization, from ACOG and the SOGC, depending on what country you live in. And so it's an interesting space to navigate through. And going back to having more time as in your training, just think you have to have more time to learn these things, to learn these nuances. And I did how did we say it? A weekend training.
Yeah.
That's all that was available almost 20 years ago when I did it. And I was a med school dropout. So I felt really confident with anatomy. I'd done all my hours in the hospital. It was a venue that I feel comfortable in. And I still, when I went to my first birth, I still stood in the parking lot flipping through my notes from my weekend training, being like, what happened? Like, I don't know. Like I was terrified. And this is somebody who was like very overqualified. And I still was like, what do I do if any of these things happen? And so we want our students to be like, not only have we learned this or something adjacent to it, I also have a team that I can contact at any time because our peer group stays open forever for our students. And I went in, we didn't have smartphones when I had my first birth, but there aren't organizations that have that. No. Like we want you to go in and be like, okay, so my client, the doctor's saying this, we've tried this, my client is at 6 centimeters. They say they're only going to give them 1 more hour. What do? I can't remember. I'm feeling like so tired. And immediately we're like, try this position. Have you done acupuncture? Here's the evidence someone will always drop in. Here's the research and what you can say to the healthcare provider to buy another hour after that if there is no change. All of these things, nipple stimulation, turn out the lights, go for a walk, change the music. Is your client hydrated? Fast and Furious. There's all this stuff, which is so helpful when you might be in a time that even I've put stuff in the group that I'm like, I don't know why, but my brain, I can't even think of what to do right now for this thing. And to be like, oh, right, I haven't tried that. Let's do that. And so that's something that is just like, it's so powerful because we have to have a community to support care providers too. And so that they have a place to dump out, and then they can just keep providing care out of the circle. And so we have, again, a longer training. So you get way more. You also have that forever community to catch you and support you and help you navigate through the ever-changing landscape. We learn more and we know more every year. Yeah. I could brag about BeboMia all day long.
I'm a little jealous of your community. I kind of wish I could plug in. Like, I'm kind of doctor breaking down my neck. What do I do?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, and there's so much brilliance when we do things collaboratively. And that's something that I've learned as the head of a movement. And even though I do work so hard to do everything non-hierarchical, I do sit in the seat of the founder and head of a movement. And I've learned the more that I like shut up and sit down, like how powerful it is. And so I love, like with my students, even now as a head facilitator, I say things and I take so much every class. Like I learn mountains. Like I have a book that I'm just writing down to be like, I've never heard this. Oh my God, this is so cool. I also have students from different countries. So we get amazing practices and like foods I've never heard of and like what they use them for and traditional practices. Like it's amazing just to hear the approach, a global approach to birth and raising of children, people sharing not only their lived experiences, but there's education that we just have never heard of in North America and that's standardized or even just accessible in other countries. Yeah. And so I always like, what, you learned all about this? I didn't even know this existed, let alone a whole program about it. Like, tell us about it. Yeah. Like, that's incredible. And I know that we can change the face of birth to not look like what we might have been forcing to, which is like traditional, I'm putting in air quotes, which is dominant culture and like a familiar thing. But like we have the opportunity to right now tackle it with a really interesting, multidisciplinary, different lived experiences, because the folks accessing healthcare in any specific country are coming from different backgrounds. We have so much global movement of citizens and bodies that like, I guarantee, I don't know how the homogeneity of your nursing staff, but Toronto, the nurses come from incredible backgrounds, many of them being doctors and midwives from other countries who can't practice. So now they're in nursing. And I've seen really cool stuff done because somebody was a doctor in Iran and now they can be a nurse in Canada, but they had to still go through all of nursing school. But they do incredible things to like prevent third degree tears, for example, that I've never seen. And I was like, that was amazing. Anyway, I could talk about this forever too, but I just think we have a really unique position with what the internet's done, what's immigration and emigration has done, that we can be tackling births with such a like unique perspective. And I think doulas are the only opportunity I see that could bring something different to the table to shake things up, because everybody else they're stuck in the role that they have to play and they're bound by so much bureaucracy and policy and accountability to insurance that I think that doulas can be a vehicle for change rather than just a stopgap for the high rate of killing babies and mothers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's just such a great opportunity to belabor the point, work together as a team, but utilize our resources, right? Because even if there's somebody in the space that's a relatively new doula that took one of those weekend programs, I will incorporate the doula in the process. And I will also talk to them like they know what I'm talking about and give them the opportunity to, even if this is a new thing for them, help me move this patient so that you can like kind of learn maybe this physician or whatever. And sometimes they'll pull me out and be like, I'm like, you're the person though. You're the support. You are the calm in the room, right? I'm not going to take that from you regardless. And so to be able to always like work together and lift people up and in support of birth givers, I think is super important, because if we're not working together, then it's to the detriment of the birth giver.
Hey there, amazing mamas to be. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the thought of childbirth? Do you have worries and fears that keep you up at night? Well, I've got some fantastic news for you. I'm here to help you transform your birth experience from fearful to fierce. I'm Kelly Hoff. I'm a labor nurse and host of the Birth Journeys podcast. If you love what you hear on this podcast and wonder how I can help you prepare for your birth, look no further. As your transformational birth coach,
I will partner with you to ensure that you feel confident and empowered as you prepare to welcome your baby into the world. Together, we'll develop a customized program where I help you learn labor coping skills, set achievable goals, and make you feel well prepared and supported for the big day. So what makes birth coaching different from those traditional birth classes? Birth classes can often overwhelm you with a flood of information in a short period of time, leaving you with more questions than answers. But with my birth coaching program, you get personalized one-on-one support, saving you time and effort. Here's what you can expect from my birth coaching program: customized guidance, tailored to your medical needs and preferred birth setting, personal support, one-on-one sessions to address your specific concerns and goals, empowerment, gain the confidence to make informed decisions and be your own advocate during childbirth. Birth coaching is not a linear process. We'll work together to determine what parts of the curriculum need to be addressed at each session. And the best part? You can enhance your birth coaching package with additional services tailored to your journey. Ready to transform your birth experience? Join my birth coaching program today, and let's take this incredible journey together. Head over to kellyhoff.com to learn more and get started. Remember, with me by your side, you'll go from anxious to assured, from overwhelmed to empowered. That's KELLYHOF.com. You can also find the link in the show notes. I'm excited to be a part of your transformational birth journey.
Yeah, for sure. It harms the family. They're stuck in the middle of this shenanigans, and they're already at risk giving birth in a hospital statistically. And birth itself as a biological function has risk associated. And then we've got this weird egoic pull happening simultaneously, and everybody deciding what would be the best and safest. And I had to unfortunately learn the hard way, because I had this bias when I first started as a baby doula, and I had to learn the hard way that even what I thought would be best and safest was not best and safest for my client. I.e., I had two clients that I really, what I would have said supported, but they would have said coerced into having a home birth. And at the end, they were like, giving birth at home was the worst thing I could have imagined. I wanted to be at the hospital. And it wasn't just me. Also, their partner was rallying, and the midwife was like, I don't want to take 100%, but I have to take responsibility that I wasn't hearing them being like, I want to go to the hospital. I was thinking like, we're close, and by the time we get there, like we could just have the baby right now at home. And the follow-up, they were like, that was terrible. I said I wanted to go to the hospital. 2 of those. I didn't get it the first time. And it took 2 for me to be like, oh, I don't know what's right for somebody.
That's a big lesson, because everybody's looking at evidence and trying to use evidence to, I guarantee you, being in the hospital, I've had similar experiences. We all do. And then we all back up and realize, oh, okay, maybe that wasn't, like, maybe I could have done that differently, or maybe I didn't have the tools to do it differently, but I'm going to go seek the tools to do that differently and to empower myself. Because, I think it is important. And something I do want to mention is that home birth for how do I say this? Physiologically straightforward. I don't want to use normal. Normal is a word that triggers people, but physiologically.
Low risk.
Yes, low risk. There we go.
Yeah.
Baby's going to come out the way that we anticipated. There's no other complications. Yes, home is definitely a great option for those that want to consider it, especially if you have collaborative care with other outside resources. It gets hairy if you don't have that, which in the US, depending on where you are, that gets complicated. But the times when, like I'd said, the hospital is helpful is if A, that doesn't feel comfortable for you. B, you have other complications, which I feel like what's happening in the medicalization of childbirth, in that we are able to help people that are higher and higher risk give birth, is we are applying those survival skills or learned tactics to low risk scenarios.
Yeah, and that's where the risk is coming in.
That's where. So that's why that's why when we say home birth, there's evidence that home birth statistically is safer, right? There's a whole lot that may go into that truth. Because we're just looking at statistics, right? It's nuanced. But that's what's happening. The hospital is learning how to care for sicker and sicker people and bring babies into the world under those circumstances. And it doesn't necessarily apply to low risk circumstances. And so that's where patient-centered care is so important. And if you're in the hospital, that's why it needs to be protected. And if you're at home, then that's a whole skill set I don't have.
Yeah. Well, and I want to qualify also that the benefit, some of the things with home birth is low risk of infections because you're not in the hospital, which is the grossest, dirtiest place on the planet.
Correct.
Filled with all the germs.
No matter how we clean it. Yeah.
It's
but also
it is the Mecca.
The Mecca of yucca.
Mecca of yuck. So you don't have that. And you come with healthcare providers that get more, like midwives get more time. They get to know you. They customize your chart, those kind of things. And if you live in an area with a birth center, that's like the sweet spot. And this is what Kelly and I were trying to say, that unfortunately for most people, it's either home or hospital.
There's not much of a connection between the two. Having to transfer starts to get hairy.
Yeah, it's a big gap between there. And so there's a few birth centers around North America, not as many as there should be. But if we look at the model like the UK, which has its own bullshit, so I don't like the UK is nailing it. But I just actually had a pod on my podcast as somebody from the UK that's, I'm really tired of people in North America holding up the UK model. Like, it's so great. It's just as terrible. And here's why. But they do have the majority of birth is handled in birth centers by midwives. If you are part of the 1% that actually needs obstetric care, and most birth is really boring. And then folks who know that they're extremely high risk, so they live with chronic disease or really serious visible and invisible disabilities, and they know having a baby is going to be a very high risk thing because they have heart issues or chronic kidney failure. Like, there's things, or they're have cancer and they're pregnant. There's the specialists that handle that. But again, that's an even smaller percentage. Most people, birth is boring, and I love boring births, which we actually, one of my students did a poll, because I say boring births when I teach all the time. And one of my students did a poll to ask, what did first time birthers think about the term boring birth? And they didn't get it. But when they asked multips, so people who've had 2 or more babies, that wasn't for you, Kelly, that was for your listeners. When they asked multips, they were like, oh yes, my goal is a boring birth.
Yes.
And it's so interesting without that lived experience of birth, that first time birthers were like, wait, I don't understand, a boring birth. Then they were like almost offended by the term. So I was like, don't put that in your marketing, because they're primates, which are people who are going to have their first babies. But like, people who have been through the system get it, that they're like, oh, it does not need to be this big hubbub.
Doesn't need to be dramatic. Yeah.
It does not need to be dramatic. Let's keep it boring, because the act of birth is, and has lots of feelings. It can feel wonderful. It can
take away from that.
Yeah, like it stands on its own 2 feet.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I just think that there's so much that needs to be shifted. And it feels some days impossible when I stand back and I look at the beast that I've been throwing stones at for 20 years, that I'm like, did I even make a difference to the world? And I have to work really hard to be like, if we didn't have anything pushing back on this system, every one of my clients would have the higher risk of feeling disenfranchised, harm, unnecessary interventions, might not have survived. And to know that I personally have supported hundreds of families, and to have, to the best of my ability, because I can't promise anybody any birth outcomes, I know that they were safer and more empowered than if I wasn't there. And to know that I've trained thousands of practitioners all over the world who we're doing our little pockets of pushing back against these systems that are not serving us. To know that those little tiny pockets have been parents that stepped into parenting empowered, and in doing so, they raise their children being empowered. And when I can see that and look at what's happened over these 2 decades I've been doing it, I can feel that there's been a difference. Because if I just imagine myself fighting the system, and now the administration, that even though as a Canadian, I just spent so much time working in American spaces, that I'm like, oh my God, the machine, it's like Fern Gully, like the whole rainforest is just like, and so, but I know that you helping your neighbor and your friend, like, you know, as a new doula, you usually start first with your community of folks, and you being able to do that, it is these like little kind of like beacons that protect the space, and magic happens. And I think that this is actually how we can change the world. If we go back to protecting birth and parents, I believe it would be a profound entry point.
I agree. Yeah, I 100% agree that when we're doing that, it's root cause. We're attacking the root cause. Yeah. Well, Bianca, it's always so great talking to you. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to bring up?
No, I think that's great. And the scholarships, we open them a couple times a year. So check back to the website if you're between sessions right now. Do keep checking back, because then they'll just be open and you can get your applications in, but they do close for 2-3 month periods. So yeah, we would love to have you. And we have our standalone birth doula training as well that folks can check out, which is wildly affordable if you have that before you step into our full spectrum. So there's lots of options for entry points into this work if you're feeling like really excited and you want to get going right now and the semester might be partway done or hasn't opened yet.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And I love chatting with you and commiserating sometimes.
Yeah. I love our chats. I love your podcast. I think you're doing really, really great work. I've also just thought over the last however long I've known you, year and a bit, I think that I just can like feel the difference of your passion and your commitment to unlearning the culture that you were raised within.
I'm still in. Yeah.
I'm still in. And just, I can feel your passion for pushing back. And I love when we have people like you. I love you and I love what you're doing. And
yeah, I definitely went from this is why we do this in the hospital to let's think about this a little bit.
Yeah, I've watched it and I can feel it and I can hear it in how you speak and the types of questions you ask your guests. And I think it's really amazing. And I just want to hold space that all we can do is learn and do better.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know. And I can feel how you've like really trusted the people that you've brought into your community to guide you and to teach you, and then to bring all your wealth of knowledge to be like, what magic can come from this? And I got all goosebumpy. I feel like I'm just really proud of what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
And I think it's really cool. And I think you should look at your own stuff to be like, I can't believe how far I've come.
Yeah, it's really fun to go back.
That's great. Rather than cringing. I know there's blogs I've written, stuff I used to say that I'm like, oh my God, I'd be canceled. I'd be like dragged in the street. I've already been canceled, so I'm uncancelable now. I'm just like, bring it, whatever. But I'm like, I know more and I do better. Yeah. And I didn't know when I was 26.
When you're putting yourself out there, that's the part. We've all just been like, I'm going to fight for what I believe in and I'm just going to start going. And then you realize, as I go, maybe the fight is a little bit more this way and we're going to go this way, or maybe I'm not fighting everybody. Maybe we can find a way to all move forward. It's been an interesting.
You hear people differently and stuff. So I want to hold the name. We should celebrate learning rather than cringe at where somebody was before. And can viscerally see how passionate and committed you are to changing the environment. And so many people say they want to come into healthcare to change it from within. Few people actually, once you're in it, it's now the water you swim in and you actually can't see the mess. And you are truly changing it from within. And I'm really grateful for that.
And the thing is, I think I didn't have a voice for what I was wanting to do. So I started with what I knew. And then I've interviewed so many doulas that I've learned as I've gone. I'm like, oh, that's a way I can do that. Or that's a way I can say that. Or they've pointed me towards evidence that I can bring, and surprisingly, a lawyer who was on the same page. I was like, wow, okay, there's a lot of support out there. So
we see you, Gina.
Yeah, Gina, we love you.
We love you, Gina. Lawyer Gina, childbirth attorney.
Exactly.
I think it's really great, and I love having you in our community. I love being in the community that we're both part of.
Same.
I think you're doing great work.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for tuning into my podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes. Don't forget to share the podcast with a friend who can benefit from the valuable insights that we share here. And if you could take a moment to leave a 5-star rating and review, it would mean the world to me. If you're ready to work one-on-one with me to embark on a transformational journey towards a confident and empowered hospital birth experience, go to kellyhoff.com/empowered and enroll in my Empowered Hospital Birth Coaching Program. Together, we'll create a roadmap to a birth experience that you'll cherish forever. That's KELLYHOF.com/empowered. Let's make your birth experience extraordinary.